There we go. So hi everyone, I'm Elliot Clark. I'm from the Centre for Sustainable Energy. So we're an energy advice charity based in Bristol, but we cover the whole southwest, and we cover, with Wiltshire, it's a project called Warm and Safe Wiltshire. So we have a free advice line where you can call up for any energy advice. I'm an energy advisor and retrofit assessor. I've been there for about 6 years now. 4 years as an energy advisor, last 2.5 as an assessor. So energy saving, I might just bring this a bit closer. I'm too tall for this table. So energy saving, there's a bit of a hierarchy with energy saving. So it's the behavioral things first that you want to do. And then you're looking at the building fabric. So improving the fabric of the property is the next in line. Then the building services, so things like your heating and ventilation, certainly. And then at the bottom, energy generation. So it should be the last thing you're looking to do. For this first part of the presentation, I'm going to look at the basics of saving energy. So it really boils down to two things. There's behavior and measures. And as an example, the behavior that we're all seeing online, it's all kind of been parroted over the years. Things like turning your lights off, very simple. And the measure related with that is maybe changing your lights to LEDs. And it's one that comes up a lot nowadays where people say, oh yeah, turn my lights off, and I do all that. And where everyone has LEDs now, that doesn't really make much of a difference anymore. So it's a bit of kind of old advice. Another example would be, so you've got a thermostat, maybe just an old one on the wall, that a new measure could be a wireless thermostat and programmer. I would say that one on the right, it's not an ideal place to have incense burning, so don't do that, because that will certainly affect your heating system and your heating schedule. So we've got 5 LEDs, which we probably use around 50 watts at most, maybe a little bit less. You have them on for 1 hour, that's costing you 1 pence. Another one that comes up a lot, television. People say, oh, I'll have the TV on for a while or in the evenings. It does range a lot. You might have one that's a kind of brand spanking new one that might use a lot more energy, or a very old one that might use a lot more energy. But let's say around 150 watts. That's going to be about 4 pence for 1 hour's usage. However, if you have an electric shower, maybe kind of the normal range is around 8 to 11 kilowatts. Just 10 minutes use of that electric shower is 42 pence. So if you've got a family of 4 of you, let's say, everyone showering every day, then it really does add up at that point. So heat energy is generally the most expensive form of energy. There is an asterisk there. I'll give some examples of some other ones where it's not. So example of that heat energy, you have here your hot water cylinder with a bit of a jacket around it at the back. Ideally, that would be covered completely. You want to insulate that to stop any wastage with your hot water. And then you've got the person holding the hairdryer the wrong way around. Hairdryers obviously create heat as well. So that's using maybe 1,500 watts or 2,000-ish. So you don't want to be using that for too long. Here's one example of something that will use a lot of energy if it's not set up correctly, is your freezer. If your freezer is overly frosted, doesn't have an auto defrost setting, I've seen it before with someone that when I was a caseworker, they got a new freezer because their old one just wouldn't defrost. And from their smart meter, they worked out that they were saving just under £200 a year. Was it £200 a year? Yeah, it was about just under £200 a year just from switching their freezer out. So it kind of paid for itself within a year. And another example is if you have a portable air conditioner. Of course, they're running kind of fairly constantly if you do have one, so they really do add up. This, you might not be able to really see it from here, but you can search online for CAC home energy fact sheets. Just put that into Google and it will be the top result. And it gives a rough idea of what different appliances use. So it is based on the price cap from October, so it's 34 pence per kilowatt hour. I know we're down to, I think it's coming down to 26 next month. We're about 28 pence per kilowatt hour at the moment. So you can start to work out from there what appliances are affecting your energy bill the most. So how can you tell where your energy is going? The classic one, the straightforward one, is a smart meter. Now, I know you can't tell with a smart meter where individual appliances are using energy, but you can do a little test, a load test, using your in-home display. You can turn everything off and see when you're turning things back on, one by one, see if there's any spikes in energy, so that you know that that could be a faulty appliance, for example. You can also get half-hourly readings for energy supplier when you have a smart meter, and from there you can, well, some energy suppliers will just give you that half-hour breakdown in your bill, and you can request it if they don't offer it, just on your bill normally, and you can then see if there's any spikes. If you've got a spike at 3 a.m. and you know for a fact that you're asleep and there shouldn't be anything going on, then maybe you've got appliances kind of switching on somewhere, especially for hot water tanks as well, that maybe you thought were off, but are coming on. I was going to say, if there are any questions as I'm going through, please do kind of just jump in. I'll try and keep to time, but yeah, I've got a lot more slides, so it might be difficult to hold on to the question. If you can't have a smart meter, this is another one that comes up a lot, then you can get an energy monitor. So they work, it's very simple really. That little thing on the left will clip onto your energy supply. You don't need to be an electrician or anything to know. Yes?
I've got a smart meter, but why can't people have smart meters? I thought they're being advertised for years.
Yes, so why can't people have smart meters? It's usually down to the supplier saying that there's a signal issue, that they cannot get a signal from say the in-home display to the meter, or even the two meters to each other, like the gas and electric sometimes. And also I think it's to do with when I don't know this specifically, but it's the way that the readings were being sent to the energy supplier. I think they used to use kind of a 3G SIM style sort of thing, and they've changed it, I believe, so it's kind of easier to send. You have less failed installs, but yeah, there's certainly a lot of people that get told, no, we just can't have one.
There's a very high proportion of installed meters that don't function.
Yes, yeah, and especially the first generation smart meters, the first generation. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be failures. The first generation was problematic because as soon as you switched energy supplier, the proprietary smart meter for one supplier then wouldn't talk to the next, and then it would just go back to being a dumb meter, and then the new supplier wouldn't install a smart meter because it wouldn't go towards their targets because there was already one technically in place. So yeah, it was a bit of a problem, but they have changed that now so that you can switch. Not that anyone's really switching at the moment because of the price cap situation, but you can switch, and it will then talk to the new system with most suppliers. There is one in mind I won't mention. Yes, I should also mention you can get ones for individual appliances for working out energy usage in appliances. So your typical household energy spend, most of it is going on your heating, space heating, and your water, nearly 50%. And so that's a key place to ensure you're getting correct. Whether that's with programmers, thermostats, again, poorly placed thermostat there on the right, next to a window, so that's going to think it's much colder than it is, constantly bringing the heating on. But that is a smart thermostat as well that's controlled by an app. So if you are, say, out on a Friday afternoon at a talk when your heating is scheduled to come on, then you can tell it to turn off on your app. For those that are on Economy 7 and have night storage heaters, there's knowing how to use your night storage heaters. It's probably the number one thing that we have to advise people on, because there's two dials, one input, one output, and most people think, 6 and 6 that equals heat. That's good. And of course, it's not the way. I don't know if anyone here has night storage heaters or knows or doesn't know how to use them, but the left side will let out the heat if it's turned up to 6 just as soon as it's being generated. So I've been to a lot of people's houses where it's boiling in the morning and freezing in the afternoon. Also, your hot water tank, having a timer on that's extremely important. The amount of places I've also seen where there's no timer and it's not kind of going into the Economy 7 system like it should, and this tank is just constantly on, and it also will have electric showers, and so the tank is heating up just for the taps. So there can be a big saving there. And then thermostatic radiator valves, TRVs, I'm sure we've all seen them, whether you can get the standard ones on the left or the smart ones that have occupancy sensors on them as well. So it will know when you're in the room and bring it up to your desired temperature. And it's just all about getting that kind of granular control on your heating system and the controls that will help you save money. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our website that has all those fact sheets on as well. So yeah, there's the URL at the bottom there, but Centre for Sustainable Energy, or cse.org.uk for our whole website, and from there you should be able to find fact sheets like such, how to make a draft excluder yourself, right there on the right. Yes, there's moving on to heat loss in a property. So the vast majority is through the walls and through the loft. So what's that, 60% roughly. The number one thing people will say to me as a retrofit assessor as well is the windows are problematic, and I feel a lot of heat loss through the windows. And then I cannot see any evidence of cavity wall insulation, for example. And it's because they can feel the draft. That's the thing. It's like when you have a cold wind come across you. That's the problem there. And you're only losing about 10% actually through the windows, 15% through drafts, maybe 15% underfloor. So draft proofing is one route to take initially. As I said, about 15, sometimes 20% of the heat lost. And you can fit little draft excluders. You get them in all sorts of places. So I think I've got one here. No, it's probably on another slide. But yeah, just like an example of where they could go through. It seems obvious for under doors and letterboxes, but also kind of the connections, the joists are going into the walls, for example, around the skirting boards. It's little kind of junctions like that can be problematic. Adrian might speak about it later with this draft proofing. So insulating walls, just knowing what type of wall you have is important. The easiest way to tell, of course, if you can see the brick pattern, if it's lots of long bricks, you've got cavity walls, and if it's about 300 mil wide, then definitely cavity. If it's long brick, or maybe a whole row of short ones, then it's probably just solid brick. You've got a solid wall. So cavity wall insulation, I'm sure you don't need me to go through the kind of the merits of it. The main thing I wanted to mention that comes up a lot is people saying, oh, well, I think it causes damp, and I had a damp issue, or my builders told me that you should always keep the cavity unfilled. And across the southwest, well, since the regulation changed kind of early 90s, insulation in walls was required, but it was blown fiber, so like your loft insulation, just kind of put into the walls. And if there was any prevailing weather, which of course we have a lot of in the southwest, then water could get into the cracks, any cracks in the render. All that water would just wick through the insulation that was there, and it wouldn't be able to escape. That's what would cause the damp. They now use polystyrene beads, which don't have that issue whatsoever, much more insulating. So this is just a map of the weather across the UK. So you can still have blown fibre across in the east and without any issues, but you do find kind of in the west, southwest, a lot of people are having their blown fibre taken out and replaced with the bead insulation. What time have we got till? Of installing insulation, cavity wall, it of course depends on the area. It could be anywhere between 800 to 1500. It depends if you're semi-detached, if completely detached, or just a terrace. But yeah, any good cavity wall insulation installer will come and do a survey first, check that your walls have been, that they're clear. They'll put a little kind of boroscope in there, because especially older properties, there might be just rubble in the middle, and that will affect the insulation as well and kind of make it not effective. That was the kind of thing that would show up on that thermal imaging camera as well, that you'd see the gaps, because there's rubble there where the insulation couldn't get to. Yeah, and also a camera would show if it's the old insulation that has sagged and dropped down, and you'd have a big cold spot there. You might not have damp issues, but it still kind of doesn't last forever, that blown fiber stuff. Solid wall insulation. Again, I don't know if I need to go through it exactly, as you're probably aware of what it is. The key thing with solid wall insulation really is having kind of vapor open materials if you have a traditional building. So lime plaster rather than using any kind of sand and cement, which will trap moisture. So yeah, any external wall insulation that's kind of worth their salt will have use vapor open materials. But yeah, if you do have solid walls, that's your main route for insulating. But it is very expensive. It's kind of 10,000 plus in any case. And then obviously any complications that come with that, such as somewhere on here. Oh yeah, features and fixtures. So you might have to have your roof line extended so that your gutter, if you've got external wall insulation coming out, then the water might then just be going straight onto that insulation. You'd have to have the kind of extension on that too. And yeah, as always, choosing a reputable installer, which is difficult. But there is a solid wall insulation guarantee agency, just as there is cavity wall insulation guarantee agency. So you can go to them for any issues that you do crop up, with limited success sometimes, but at least they're there. And here's just an idea of what solid wall insulation would look like. As I said, that final render being a lime plaster, ideally. There's internal wall insulation as an option, as it's usually much cheaper, and you don't have to change the external appearance, because that's a big gripe with external wall, is you can have that final just plain render. If you want the detailing, make it look like brickwork or stonework again, it obviously adds to the cost a lot, and you need a good installer for it. Whereas the internal wall insulation, it's kind of much simpler. However, it can be quite disruptive. You have to move plug sockets and fixtures and things. Do it room by room is a good way around that, but you're still kind of on a building site in the house, really. It does also reduce the internal space. So if it's a small room you're in, it's a few centimeters, but once you take that off every wall, your brain's good enough to realize that this is a bit tighter than before. It takes a bit of getting used to. The main issue with internal wall insulation is making sure you've got good ventilation, because if any moisture can get between the insulation and the cold wall, then you get what's called interstitial condensation, and that will then form damp and mold, and you won't really know it's there until it's kind of progressed quite far. So ensuring that the install's done not just like a dot and dab with some adhesive, but covering the whole thing, making sure it's firmly in, sealing all the gaps, and then kind of plastering over, so that any gaps that air could get into and moist air could get into is not getting there, really. And yes, vapor open materials, again, you can get lime render for internally as well, which does the same. It allows the moisture to get back out if any moisture does get in, rather than trapping it. Same again, make sure you get a reputable installer, and it is covered by Swiga. So I'm conscious of time here. Matt, how? Lovely stuff. So the other one, I talked about walls, because you lose a lot of your heat through your walls. Lofts, again, hopefully everyone's kind of got their loft insulation topped up. 300 mil is the recommended amount under building regs, really. Adding more than that is kind of going to be diminishing returns. If you can see your joists along the floor with the insulation in between it, you probably have about 150 mil of insulation. So you don't want to be able to see the joist there. If you do want the storage space, where else are we going to keep our Christmas things, then you can get struts that go on top of the joists, and then you can lay boarding on top of that, so that you can have the insulation underneath, importantly not squashed down by having said Christmas things on it, because then it just doesn't become, it becomes less useful. Yeah, and then you can have a new storage space as loft platform. But ventilating as well, make sure you've got a tile that has got a ventilator on it, or what some installers do is, looks like a door wedge really, just in between the felting, just to allow a little bit of air to come up through from underneath the tiles, because you don't want to risk it then being insulated up there, nowhere for any moist air to escape, and it kind of sweating, condensing, and potentially rotting the timbers. Again, any installer that knows what they're doing will kind of assess that situation for the ventilation and add that in. Or if you've got pitched roof, kind of sloping roof, you can add it to the rafters from the inside or the outside. And you just use some rigid board insulation. But it's better to have it external because of the way, if you have it internally, then the moisture can get trapped on the cold side, and that could be a problem, same as that interstitial condensation that I mentioned with the internal wall insulation. Whereas if the insulation's on the outside, then there's still going to be a smaller temperature differential between the inside and out, because, or sorry, where the condensation is on the inside of the insulation. I hopefully you know what I mean. but yeah, it's better to do it that way, but of course, kind of more disruptive. And then looking at floors for insulation. So you could have, if you've got suspended floor, you can put, that's again, rigid board insulation, or even kind of the earth wall insulation in between. And then make sure it's kind of hung correctly, got a little hammock to sit in between those joists. There is also, I don't think I've got a picture of it on here, but there is a company called Qbot who do underfloor insulation with spray foam, which I will add to that last slide. Don't get spray foam in the roof. There's a lot of scams that go around where people are getting spray foam on their rafters and then getting told that the loft insulation is unsafe, and then they pay thousands for the privilege of having someone take away their perfectly good insulation, and also in some cases make their properties unmortgageable. They have to get their roof replaced before they can get a new mortgage or sell the property, because you cannot prove the kind of structural integrity of the rafters, because they're all covered up with foam. It's different for underfloor because, again, the same reason I said about the roof line. If you want to put the insulation on the outside, then the condensation can't really form on that warm layer. The floor underneath the floor is a more stable environment than a roof. So Qbot will go up and down under the floor with a little robot that has a camera and a spray foam can on it, and layer underneath. And that way you don't have to pull up floorboards in every room. It can just be a lower disruption method. They will, of course, look to make sure you've got enough ventilation under the floors as well, just to make sure there's no condensation forming. So yeah, as it says there, ensure ventilation is maintained. And then you've got concrete floor insulation. Solid floors, you don't lose as much heat through because they're a good kind of thermal mass, and there's nowhere really for air to move. Yeah, you can kind of insulate that just above. You do have to be cautious of how much you're insulating. If it's a small room, then sorry, yeah, I realise I'm in the way, but if it's a small room, then you need to make sure you've got the minimum room heights as well under building regulations, and yeah, you don't want to start hitting your head on door frames and things like that. Well, maybe for me. And then space heating. So here I'll just do a quick comparison of different heating systems. So there we've got the boiler, we've got the standard electric heating, and the heat pump. So you're looking at a boiler, a new one, 90% efficient. You direct electric heating, you put 1 kilowatt in, you get 1 kilowatt of heat out. Whereas the heat pump's 300 to 400%, 450% efficient, ideally. I will come onto that a bit more in the second part of the presentation. But the key thing here is looking at the cost of heat pumps. So where the energy prices have gone through the roof, especially gas in comparison with electricity, it's looking at, if I use the same amount of electricity, sorry, if I use the same amount of gas, so here 7.96 pence per kilowatt hour of usable heat for that top one. Again, slightly in the way. Then if the prices have gone up sufficiently with gas, it means that heat pumps start being in line with a gas central heating system, whereas in years prior, it's always been that gas has kind of come out cheaper unless you have a very efficient property. Yes? So infrared heat panels, again, it's kind of one for one in terms of energy put in and energy coming out. It depends on the orientation that you have them in the rooms, because what I would say with infrared is that you're heating the thing in front of it. You're not heating the air. So you have a risk of the property, you're not heating the walls, and so damp and mold could form because the walls are still cold, whereas with these kind of other heating systems, it's heating the air, so with your radiators or convector heaters. So unless you've got them kind of dotted around everywhere, or you can get the ceiling mounted ones as well. Yeah, you're heating the person, not the air, which isn't always ideal. On to this next slide, though, you can see the difference for the climate impact of gas versus the heat pump. It's a quarter of the amount, and that will change, of course, as heat pumps improve, as gas will always be around that amount, but it will go up in price as it always does.